whatever it might be. And that's how we can individualize learning for K-12 and for higher ed. The key is metadata. The key is the information infrastructure that will make it all possible, which is a major role for us in the information field, and that is to provide this infrastructure for us for that. And I wish I had time to talk about that. I do think that the I field and the I schools, and I'm a big, as you can tell, I-er, and for Lorcan, I brought my uniform for today. Lorcan, I don't know where you are, but he says I wear a uniform every day. This is my iSchool hat. These are some of the things that you can think about. I think we can lead the way. We are champions of the professional as well as the academic. We can be a model for our universities, right? We can forge new relationships with business that are working together. And we can be the academic skunkworks for our institutions. This is my picture of agility, which also shows tremendous strength, because you can't be agile unless you're strong, right? And the I schools are my schools, and they're your schools as well. Thank you very much. Now, am I supposed to bring Bill up?
I'm trying to get there myself. Thank you. Sir? Okay, good morning, and thank you, Michael. I was really pleased yesterday, or actually before yesterday, when I read Michael's paper, his 5 minutes, and my 5 minutes are actually going to complement each other. So I think we're on a little bit of a roll here. So first, you know, my credentials are up there, but I was here at UNC Chapel Hill for 30 years. Professor of mathematics, I was associate dean at one point for general education, and I was the IT guy, as Susan mentioned. And the connection here for me to this event was, as I was stepping down, winding down that role, the School of Information and Library Science asked me if I'd like to come and be tenured there instead of in mathematics. And I said yes. And so I had a connection there for a while, but then some interesting opportunities came along. They called them venture capitalists in that day. I guess they still do, but they circled the wagons around some of the things we were doing on the academic side of using technology, and that led me into the past 12 years of business. So I'm coming today from Ellucian, this business perspective, but I'm certainly talking not about our company, but about where I think things are going. You know, Will Rogers said that you can be on the right track and still be run over. And you kind of made that point, Michael, with the picture of the classroom, the kids sitting there, you know, so on. We've been on the right track, and we have a distinguished record of education in our country, I think. But unless we do something different, you know, that train is heading toward us really fast, and we're going to be run off the track. But the secret here, or the key, is to be able to get up, dust ourselves off, and get back on the right track. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that. I have to use this. So first, a little wisdom from the 20s and 60s, just to sort of set the right tone here. From the 20s, I just love this one. Human history becomes more and more a race between education and catastrophe. Yes or no today? So that was written, History of the World, H.G. Wells in 1920, many, many years ago. And this is really what I want to talk about. So I'm convinced that most of us in this room would probably see education as a common good, by which I mean private and public good. Fair enough? You'd go for that? Okay, I think that's right. I certainly see it that way, but it's a little more difficult than that. It's not education itself, it's the outcomes of education that are the common good. So that, in a word, would be more about learning outcomes. So we'll come back to that. Now let's jump to the 60s, though, sort of just to think about the neuroscience of this today. Tony Schwartz was a media guru, and he said that education is the slowest form of learning. You can read formal education. Do our students think that today? Big time. Agility, we don't have. All right, the next one, media guru, you recognize for sure, the medium is the message. Let's connect these two because both were in the 60s. And Schwartz is actually best known for an ad that precedes many of you, but you may have heard of it. in connection with the 1964 presidential race between Barry Goldwater and Lyndon Johnson. There was an ad called the Daisy Field ad, or something like that. Little girl standing in a field of daisies picking the petals, and the bomb drops. And this is all in silence, I think. But that ad, that medium, TV, did decide that election. Most analysts agree. So this is an important message, and if I had to think about this message today, I'd probably say, well, the medium's no longer television, it's how about the cloud? Now, it may not be the cloud in 5 years, 10 years, but this is kind of where we are. The old media is not gone, it's just less prominent. Prominence is shifting to the new medium, the cloud. So I'm going to talk about these two concepts. Put them up here, educational attainment and student success. Student success, that's easy. The moment we became under pressure in higher education over the past 5, 6, 8 years, people started talking about student success. Ah, yes, that's it. We must work on student success. Well, absolutely, we should do that. We should have been doing that all the time. I thought that's what I was doing when I was professing to students. Nevertheless, we can understand this because it's about persistence rates, retention, leading to graduation rates, credentialing rates, right? That's sort of how we would interpret it. And we're on board. Most schools are trying to do something about this. Foundations like Gates and Lumina are funding big national projects. Fair enough, but I submit to you that student success is necessary but not sufficient to institutional success. That institutional success is necessary but not sufficient to system success or statewide success in our national context. And that statewide success, for example, is necessary but not sufficient to national success. Educational attainment is usually stated in national terms. As a metric, it's this idea that we have to increase the proportion of our adult populations holding a credential, a trusted, in our case, maybe accredited credential of some kind, degree or certificate. Well, that's a big, different idea. That's a macro idea. Our president states it at a national level. I'm sure we have people in North Carolina stating it at a statewide level. But will student success and institutional success in the sense of student success, degree, graduation rates and that sort of thing, will that add up to national success? I don't see any reason to believe it will. So what I want to do is sort of take us to thinking in both macro and micro terms and see if we can't from that sort of gather some information looking at outcomes as opposed to just education itself. I see no reason to think I could ever predict what some might say, the University of 2050. But if I'm thinking about that kind of issue, what I want to think about is the problems of 2050 that education will be positioned or should be positioned to help solve. And that's much less hard because already we see the seeds of those problems today. So let me take us there and go as fast as I can. Someone will tell me when I'm near my end. So I had titled my paper as Education's Past is 2050 Prologue. I hope you understand that. And I beg the question. So I think the answer is, well, no, particularly if our job is to scale attainment, affordability, and accountability. 4 big A's, and that big word Gary mentioned, one of the first words you mentioned, Gary, scale. So how are we going to think about scale, macro, and at the same time think about the micro, the student, the professor? All right, let's go there. Very quickly, going back to Wells' words, education versus catastrophe. We're facing a puzzle here. I just want to remind you of the dimensions of this. We're asked to think globally but act locally. I'm not sure it's okay, but it's not the solution anymore. And that's what I meant when I said these micro student success, institutional success kind of solutions that we're working on, no reason to believe they're going to add up to this big macro need. By the way, you know why, just thinking for a moment about Wells' words, why are those so important? I mean, how would we translate catastrophe today? I may have it in here someplace, but let me just say it in case I don't get to it. I would put it this way. Education today is important because we're trying to advance and sustain the environmental, economic, and social justice. that a fair statement?